frustrations
I
and
gotta look this
sadness.
up. Squash borers?
Yeah,
How big is this animal?
not big, but it does a lot of damage.
Is it a furry animal?
No,
A squash
I
boar
think it
sounds like
looks more like
something.
a grub. I'm looking.
Oh, a squash boar sounds like something that kind of crawls on the ground at night while you're sleeping with
It
hair on
looks
it.
like a little, like a little grub or something.
Oh, you can't see because
There it
wait,
is. That's the same picture I got up.
yeah,
Oh yeah, that's a grub.
yeah.
Squash vine borer.
Okay, well, if you look down low, let's see here. This is what he does to
Oh
your
man, he tears
squash
it up.
plants.
Yeah, he tears it up.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you don't get squash anymore.
Wow.
It's
No,
very
man, he
not
kills the
nice of
entire
him.
plant.
Well, goes at the base and takes all the nutrients. And so then nothing gets up the plant to feed the squash that you're trying to grow.
He's a devil.
He is the devil incarnate.
Welcome to Second Take at Eastlake, a podcast of Eastlake Community Church in Irmo, South Carolina. You are invited to join us any Sunday at 9 or 11.
In a bug.
In a bug.
Yeah.
Devil bug.
Yeah.
Mm,
Devil bug.
This is what Adam did. This is what Adam did.
yep.
Yeah.
This is the problem with the world right there. Well, I'm going to start a garden pretty soon. I'm getting closer and
excited.
closer every day. Michelle's going to help me, but I don't want anything that gets eaten by other things. I need a safe garden.
Safe garden.
Easy to do garden.
Yeah.
All right, so the podcast is back. We got this part of the crew in the house. We're going to start rolling with this again. Michelle and Ray though are about to head to Israel on a cool tour. To what are you guys doing?
We are going on it's called Walking the Text tour, where we're not riding in vehicles to all the places. We're actually walking to all the places. So,
Like Jesus did.
Wow.
so if you watch The Chosen and you see how they're walking around with him, we will be walking around with a guide to all the places. So we're looking to log somewhere around 8 miles or something per day.
That's like
At least.
Disneyland.
Yeah.
That's more than
Never been.
Disneyland.
Yep.
Wow.
I think we're going to come back very fit. That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's cool. So they're about to head out, and we just launched. I mean, for a little bit, they're
Yeah.
going with a couple people from the church on this Walk the Text tour, and but we just started a new series, which I'm excited about. And it turns out suffering is over. There won't be any more suffering. Congratulations, life just got easier, and now we're in Place for a Purpose, which is kind of like a neighboring series.
Yep.
It's more than neighboring though. It's really like how to be, I've read a little bit of it. How to be a good neighbor, but also how to disciple people and how to live on mission.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
And the book looks like this, and we
Yep.
highly recommend it. And this book was written by Tasha Chapman.
Nope. That's the forward.
That's the forward. Thanks, Michelle. This book was written by Chris McKinney.
Yep.
That guy.
Yep.
That's the guy right there. All right. So if you haven't gotten it, we recommend it. If you listen to this podcast, you probably want bonus points anyways. And so you should be reading the book for ultimate pointage.
Okay. Ultimate pointage.
Yeah. And yep. So that's the deal. That's what we're talking about. But before we do that, just a real quick check-in, because it's been a little bit. What has been your favorite part of summer? So summer kind of happened. It was wild, as summers always are. But what was your favorite part? Is there anything that stood out that you'd say, I loved that part of summer, and maybe something that people didn't know about it? Even though we were in the series about suffering, we weren't surviving summer. We were thriving through summer a little bit.
Yeah. So is this personal or is this
It's personal.
personal?
Everybody already knows the church stuff.
Okay.
This
right.
is something that they don't know.
Something that they don't know. So I was looking for my pictures, but I'm not seeing them.
Uh-oh.
So I have two things.
Okay.
One is relational, and that
Ooh,
was
you're in a relationship?
that is not what I said.
Oh,
I
hold
mean, I'm
up.
in lots of relationships, but not that kind. So
Okay, okay. Close
no.
call.
Yeah, no. But I went to Michigan with my family. And the thing that was the most fun on that trip was we played telestrations. We had the
Mm.
12 pack, and I have never seen my Uncle Lou laugh so hard in my entire life. It was worth the price of admission just to watch him laugh.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So that's one.
Okay.
The other one is my garden.
Oh,
Spite of the squash borers, my garden is really pretty. That's why I was looking for a picture, because I just
need
took
to
one
see
to send
it.
to my family, but I'm not getting it to pull up. So,
I want to see it because I've been excited about this garden.
all right. Well, while Ray's telling you about his, I will go back because it's not that long ago and I should be able to find it. I
You're
can
one of those
find
people
the
that take,
hornworm and the caterpillars.
you're one of those people who takes too many pictures.
Guilty as charged.
Yep. What
Yeah.
about you, Ray, while she's looking for it?
Actually, the thing that I think for me that was really, really good, it really was, it has something to do, it's two things, and they both have to do with church.
That's
One of them
good.
has to be, one of them has to do in personal, that we made it through a series on suffering.
Yeah.
And so not that that was arduous or was difficult. It was the point of why we chose to do this. And yesterday I was called by a friend while we were in staff meeting, and it was a dire situation for this guy. But I didn't get to him until later yesterday afternoon. And when I called him, it was all about suffering.
Mm.
And I was able to, resource him the book and tell him go back and listen to the series, because all the things that he was expressing to me that he was dealing with and a close friend of his was dealing with, it pertained to suffering. And I said, this is so odd that you're calling me about this right now. And we just finished this series that I think really has equipped us
Mm-hmm.
for whatever's up ahead or what we might be going through right now. So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that was personal to me, I mean, I'm gonna admit something right here. I hate it when anybody goes on vacation. I don't.
He does. He's got FOMO. It's not FOMO, but you like to have all the people around. You're social.
I do. When somebody says, "Hey, I'm off on," there's a little piece of me that just wants to say, "For what? Like, why are you off?" Yeah. And so
It's
I
true.
mean, you were off. You were off a couple of days last week, and Leah was off, and then today, Rob, I was like, you know what? There are times that I just want to say nobody can be off. I mean, it includes me. I just want all of us there doing the things and doing life together. So that yesterday when we were at staff and everybody was there, I was like, yes, this is what I like right here. So I'm not going to say the pulled pork was strategic. All I'm saying is I'm glad everybody was there.
Yeah, that's the thing about Ray. He likes to have all of his friends in us. Like there could be a hurricane coming through town and Ray's not canceling his small group. Ray would be like, no, we're all coming to small group. It could be like fire falling from the sky, and Ray would be like, no, we're gonna go through our book study, obviously.
Well, that's the double whammy. I mean, it would be bad enough if somebody's missing, but then if we can't do the book study, That makes for a
Oh,
bad day for Ray.
yeah, Ray loves that stuff. He loves it. Everybody in there being a family, which is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
But yeah, that is true, Ray. 100%. Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
took off because I had company in town. So my summer was basically spent with company in town. Now there's good and bad to that. The good is you get to catch up with friends. You realize how many, relationships you have and strong friendships and history and all the things that you get from friends. But the hard thing is like me and Kristen basically didn't have a month where it was just us in our house. So I'm kind of the opposite of Ray. He wants to have all the people around. I'm kind of like, after, I have a limit. I'm social, but after a certain while, I'm like, okay, maybe me and Kristen could run this operation for a little bit. So yeah, last week I took off because we had more company in town, but I don't know. My favorite part of the summer is probably just the times overall that we just spent like eating meals together as a family, cooking out. We did some grilling. And just, it's funny, like we'll go on a trip or we'll do something, some big fancy something. But the times that I like the most are when we all just kind of happen to be in the house and eating dinner or grill. I like to be outside grilling. That was my favorite part of the summer. But honestly, I don't know about you guys, but I need winter to come. I hate winter, but I need it to slow everything down. Cause I go a million miles an hour through the summer. I can't help it. I'm like, everything's fun. It's like we need the sun to go down a little early. We need to like fall asleep watching a football game. Like we need to just chill out a little bit over here. I can't live like this.
Yes, too humid here.
It's too
It is
humid.
too humid.
Yeah, there's like a hurricane coming down right now. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, find out where Michelle gets her hair done at, because for it to be as humid as it is here, and her hair looks like that, and Philip's hair, and it's not a fro, you need to find out where they get their hair styled at.
I know where Michelle gets her hair styled at because somebody told me they cut her hair.
Lila Cook.
Lila Cook.
Yeah. She also cuts Caroline Buck's hair. So
and my hair professional is Kristen.
Flawless curls.
My
Kristen.
flawless curls are compliments of Kristen.
All right, Kristen.
She just says, "Hey, you got one out of the way there." That's how we cut my hair.
Okay.
But hey, let's get to the point of this sermon.
Oh, wait a minute. You made me look this up.
Oh yeah, zoom in a little bit. Wow, Michelle, that's a huge garden.
Yeah. And that's just the middle of it. That's one end. That was the best picture.
Wow, Michelle, you're on pro levels over there.
And then there's my little dog looking in the garden.
I bet that does make you happy.
It does. Makes me very happy. All those gorgeous flowers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's pretty
cucumbers
nice.
And yeah. So there you go. Now you've seen it.
Very cool. All right. Michelle's going to cook an all natural meal for us. Veggies only.
I had Japanese eggplant today for lunch.
Wow. That's cool. That's cool. All right. So let's talk about this sermon. This one was really about like seeing our neighbors and different things like that, and like some of the ways our neighborhoods operate, and how does God want us to operate within our neighborhood. And one of the things that was so interesting that stood out to me, Michelle, was this whole like idea that it's the way Adam and Eve really messed it up was it became about them, and they felt like they knew better than God, like they trusted themselves more. And so, and then how that relates to our neighborhoods, because, okay, so in case you didn't know, the book talks about the first neighborhood as being the garden. So the garden being the very first neighborhood, and it got messed up by sin. But this whole idea of like everybody comes home and they park in their garages and they hide, like it was all about in the first garden, it became about Adam and Eve. And then whenever sin was brought in, they started hiding. They saw that they were naked. And I don't know about you guys, but my neighborhood can be just like that. I love my neighborhood, but I mean, sometimes you have to be like National Geographic, you got to be out there waiting. do we spot somebody? Because if not, you won't even see them. Like they don't even come out. Is
Yep.
that how you guys' neighborhoods are, or kind of?
Kind of. The lady across the street from me, they're out a lot. They really like to work in their yard. So
Okay,
probably of all the people.
they're the most
But
active.
yes, but I would say that, yes, it is hard to connect with neighbors, because they
Yeah.
do. They go in and shut the door.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't have
My
a.
neighbor-
Go ahead, Ray.
I was gonna say my neighborhood, people are out walking all the time. And it's funny how walkable this neighborhood is for it not to have sidewalks. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, people are constantly walking, versus the neighborhood that I grew up in. When I say everybody was outside, everybody was outside. Grandma, grandpa, kids, grandkids, everybody. Front doors were wide open. And I mean, you could see inside people's houses, and it's totally different now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we hide.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what's even worse is, so when we hear about something bad that has happened, we're all caught off guard because they hid themselves inside their home. When I was growing up, if Ray got his butt beat, everybody knew it because the door is open, the windows are cracked, he is in trouble. Nowadays, you have no idea what's happening most
Yeah.
of the times inside and behind the doors of people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
That
And
is
so,
true.
like it's funny. Our neighbor. Well, I think part of the reason it's not a lot of people out in our neighborhood is it's not a very big neighborhood. I mean, it's like 1 block long, and that's it. It's
Mhm.
in and out. But we found some ways to just interact with people, like when here in a little bit when all the pecans, whatever they are, pecans, whenever they fall off of the tree in our yard, which we have a huge pecan tree, we invite all the neighbors over because you could fill up 100 buckets with these things, and they're just all. So I have a little roller and that picks them up off the ground, and neighbors come over and we'll roll with them, and to pick them up. And that's one of the ways, but it is hard to just get to know people. It's funny, this morning I met my neighbor that is less than 100 feet from my house for the first time this morning. She came through to get a cup of coffee, and she said, "I'm your new neighbor." And I was like, "What?" But it's just so ironic that the way we meet is like miles down the road when she lives but anyway, so now we're going to connect and hang out.
That's cool.
And the way we all know each other is by our landscaping. Oh, you're the one with the such and such landscaping. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
yeah, it's interesting. So the goal, Michelle, I mean, like you were making jokes of it, but it was funny about the ways that we grew up thinking we need to evangelize and share the love of God to our neighbors. But how are we supposed to do it now? Like how do you recommend, after going through this chapter? And I know you preached about it, but like if you could just sum it up, how do you recommend we get to know these people? Or what's our goal? How are we supposed to do this today?
Well, I think our goal is to love people. And then, we can do that outwardly and then pray for people. And then wait for the Holy Spirit to give you a moment where you feel like this is a moment when they're struggling, or I can offer to pray for them. But you wait for that Holy Spirit moment. I think in my younger years, I always was trying to work up, okay, I've got to get to the part of the conversation where I present Jesus to this person. And that just doesn't work. So if you love them and pray for them, and then the Holy Spirit will open the door at the right time. And that could be a week or a year or 5 years before you get to have any further deep conversation. But if you're loving them well, it could lead to it.
Yeah. It's like people aren't our projects.
Right.
Yeah. People are here for us to love and to build up. And do you ever feel like what would you say, or either of you guys say to somebody who says, well, we can't just, how would I do the opposite of this? How would I describe it? We can't just go through life and just, floating on butterflies and love people. We have to tell them there is truth to this world, and if they die, and there's a chance that they could be spending an eternity in hell, or like, what would you say to somebody who's upset with you for your sermon this Sunday and they're telling you these things? Michelle, don't you know? What would you say? Or Ray, what would you say?
I'm sorry. Right now, I have stuck in my head because when you guys were talking, you talk about this is your moment. Now that song is in my head and it won't
One
stop.
shot.
Right. This is
Eminem?
your moment. So yeah, I mean, I'm like, you know what? If we could just have that song queued up when you're having that moment with your neighbors, so now this is your moment.
You only got one
It
shot.
makes me think, right? Because how many of us think after the fact that, oh, I could have said something then,
Yeah.
or I could have paid it forward then. And like we're gifted moments after moments all the day long
Mm-hmm.
to be a blessing. I was looking at somebody's thing just a few minutes ago, and they had talked about how they went to a local coffee shop, and the person that was taking their order said, "I got you today."
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Why?" It's like, "Because I wanted to."
Mm-hmm.
And so she left with her coffee saying, "You know what? I knew it was going to be a good day when I walked in and the person that works there bought my coffee for me. Now I feel like I need to look for my moment to pay it forward."
Mm-hmm. You kind of want to. It inspires you. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, and Philip, you were asking, like, what about somebody who thinks that maybe we're not taking it seriously enough when we just talk about love, love, love,
Mhm.
and I personally, when I finally let
Michelle, you
God
went
be,
dead.
what?
Can you hear Philip?
I can hear her.
You can't hear me?
Now I can. I was like,
Okay.
what?
Must be those Android products.
Oh,
And
shoot.
it ain't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was about to say that ever since I released to God that he is God and I am not, and I stopped trying to put the burden of somebody going to hell or not going to hell on my shoulders,
Hmm.
I'm just more relaxed and I'm better able to love people because I'm not uptight and they don't feel like I have some agenda.
Mhm.
And so it's not that I don't take it seriously. If the Holy Spirit prompts me to have a conversation, and sometimes sometimes it might be weird, he might ask me to say something to somebody I'm in conversation with at a store, and that feels weird. But
Mhm.
after walking with Jesus, when the Holy Spirit is prompting you to say something. And
Yeah.
so I just wait for that instead
Mhm.
of feeling like I'm the one who has to work it up and make everything happen.
Yeah. It's a good word. It's a good word. So this is a question from the book. We'll go through a couple of these, which is really cool, by the way. This is why we recommend you get the book. But it's got, at the end of each chapter, it's got a few like discussion questions. One of them is, how do you see the effects of sin and brokenness in your neighborhood? And how do you experience disorder, discord, or disconnect in your neighborhood? I have a couple. If you guys want to think about it, I can go first.
Okay.
I mean, so I'm really lucky because I'm not in the HOA. We live in this like old house in the middle of everybody else who's in an HOA, but it's when you hear about people being so upset over who built a fence or who did this and who did that, and you know, and how they're doing it. And then I've seen people that are like, well, I'm building it anyways, and they can, there can sometimes be a selfishness that comes in, and they see their piece of the neighborhood as a, this is mine and this is what I want to do with it, versus a community trying to build something together.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
see that even in my life. So I'll translate that into my life. Like I can wake up in a day s- and think about what I consume. What am I going to consume versus waking up to the day and saying, what am I going to contribute? I'm like, even down to I'm going to sound like the hippie Californian, but I'm going all the way. I'll just go all the way, even down to what am I going to eat? What am I drinking water out of today? What am I taking from this world? What am I contributing to this world? And I want to be a person that contributes love, that contributes healthy dialogue, conversation with people, that's not trashy. I'm not one of those tree hugger people, but I don't want to be a contributor to problems. I want to be a contributor to solutions, even if it is taking care of this earth and doing my part, but it's also relationally too. So
Yeah.
I see sin not just I see sin everywhere, but it doesn't play out just in my neighborhood. It plays out in my life too.
Mhm. Yep.
So that was one of the questions. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Well,
I see with my neighbors. One of my neighbors had he broke his back, and we saw the recovery process for that, and it didn't look good. But now I see him out taking the trash out and returning to function. He was a Air Force veteran. I see another neighbor who they care a lot for the surrounding neighbors, even to the extent of trimming my bushes because they don't like it when my bushes look a particular way. I don't care anything about them bushes, and so if you want to cut them in circles or squares, you go right ahead. You go right ahead. I'm not gonna stop you, and they like to cut them, so I'm not gonna argue with you about that. Then you have neighbors down the street that are getting divorced. You have homes where kids come home and there are no parents there for whatever length of time. You see the disconnect from those parents to their kids and vice versa. You also have the neighbor where you see the wife is literally living out her vows to her husband, who is no longer able to do his activities of daily living on his own, where she has to care for him. I mean, we are at least in my neighborhood, I'm surrounded by the beautiful brokenness of all of humanity, which I am a part of.
Mhm.
Have a daughter that lives here with grandchild that, the relationship didn't work out. So, I mean, we can close our eyes. We can attempt to close our eyes to all that's around us, but we see the results of sin all around us.
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. You know, I, like Philip, don't have a HOA in my neighborhood. And so we kind of band together to make sure that the front of the neighborhood gets cut, because otherwise it's going to look terrible and all of us will suffer as far as the value of our homes. And
Mhm.
so over the years, different things have happened. For a couple of years, I took payments from people and then hired somebody. Right now, there's some people in the neighborhood who have a lawn care business who are doing it. And, I've seen other neighbors organize it. And sometimes there can be friction because not everybody in the neighborhood wants to contribute to things. And
Mhm.
so I've seen, as people are trying to accomplish this good thing, where
Mhm.
they can get crosswise with one another because it's frustrating. Some people don't want somebody telling them what to do, and other people feel like, I don't have the money, I'm on a fixed income. And so sometimes people can get a little aggravated with one another. So I would say
Mhm.
that is just a typical way that sin manifests in a relationship in neighborhoods, is
Mhm.
misunderstandings between neighbors, especially when you're trying to work together.
Mhm.
um, and then, Ray, when you were talking about kids, I get my dogs up and walk them pretty early in the morning right now because it is so hot. And if I don't walk them, I'm like, we're out between 6:30 and 7:30. We're always back in the house by 7:15 or 7:30. And my neighbor who's renting on one side of me, um, they have a young boy, it looks like he's in grade school age. And they wait for the bus in their driveway. And I didn't realize, so one morning I said, so does the bus come right to your house now? And she said, yes, it does. And so that was never the case for me. And so, I'm watching, I guess this is a day and age where parents are concerned about kids being picked up or trafficked. And so now our buses are going door to door. Now, the older kids must not do that, but yet there is a mom who her daughter stands at the bus stop down at the entrance, and she parks right around the corner and she sits there and waits till her daughter gets on the bus because she wants to make sure she's safe. And
Wow.
I feel like those are both real evidences of sin in our world, that we can no longer send our children to a bus stop and feel confident that they're going to get where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yep. So true. Here's another good question too. What's the story behind how you ended up in your current neighborhood? How might God have been at work behind the scenes to place you there? How does that change the way you see? Oh, I like this part of the question. So then how does that change the way you see your neighbors and your role in the neighborhood?
Our house was vacant for 6 years
Wow.
before we
Wow.
came down here, this house that we're in now. And when we got here, they had attempted to move back in, the family that owned it, and they had vacated it 3 years prior. So it was 3 years vacant, and then somebody tried to move in, the family tried to move in, and then they moved out again. So it was 3 years vacant again. And this house was a gift to us, is really what it was. Um, the story I will tell you, because it's a longer story. When we came down to actually interview for the position, Zeke Riddle, who is our realtor, had 8 houses to show us. This was the second house. And so when we walked up and he was fumbling with the lockbox, the Lord said, "This is the house." Well, I was like, "Oh, okay." Because I'm wrestling with the thought of having to relocate, and all this is still new to me. Well, I tell Zeke, I said, "This is the house." He's like, "How do you know? We haven't even walked in." I said, "The Lord just said it." And I said, on top of that, I was like, "Wait, watch. When she sees this, she's going to say, 'This is the house.'" Well, sure enough, we walk inside the house, and Sherlyn is head over heels for this house. And while they're touring the home, I get my phone starts buzzing because the church that I was at did a press release to the 3 campuses on Twitter and Facebook and all that, in emails, that I was leaving come October of 2018. And so I'm at the counter, literally bawling my eyes out, and my wife comes out to see me, with my phone in my hand, shaking and crying. And Zeke comes out. He's like, "No, no, no, no crying. This is a happy occasion. This is a great house. You found the house." And my wife told him what was going on. So we leave, go see the other 6 houses, and my wife asked, "Could we come back to see this house?" Zeke, I told him, we can go and see it, but I'm not getting out the car again. I was just emotionally spent. So they go in, look at the house, and then my wife comes back into the vehicle, and Zeke is driving us back to where we're staying, and says, "Hey, so when are we going to put an offering on the house?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know what I'm being approved for, because my phone is now dead. And so how about I call you tomorrow, but you come here and pick us up. When I find out what my lending agency have approved me for, you come back and get me. I mean, we'll talk about it." And so 8:30 in the morning, Zeke is coming back. But that night, when I charged my phone, I found out that I was not approved to be able to purchase this house.
Wow.
So I sent Zeke the email and said, "Hey, I don't feel like talking about this. I'll see you in the morning at 8:30. So I knew that when he picked us up, we were going to have to renegotiate or find another house.
Mm-hmm.
He picks us up the next morning. We're driving to the office, and he gets ready to introduce the conversation about, so what houses are we going to go look at? And my phone goes off. was an email from a close friend saying, hey, don't forget, when you and Sherilyn find the house, you're supposed to call me because I'm supposed to pay for the house in cash.
Wow.
So after we sort all of this out and Zeke calls the person to find out if this is actually happening, it's happening. The deal is that, hey, I understand that because you're moving there and you don't have a job yet, and so you don't have any money or anything to show for it, you have a home in St. Louis to sell, I want to make sure that you get where God has called you to be. So this house was paid for in cash. We bought it back from that person 6 months later when
Wow.
Sherilyn got a job and everything got settled. And that's the story of how we ended up in this neighborhood.
That's crazy, man. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Very cool. What about you, Michelle?
Well, I actually was kind of unhappy in the house that we were living in. It wasn't the house I would have chosen to be in long term, and it had a lot of problems and things that needed to be fixed. And so at the same time, I felt kind of stuck. And my ex-husband's name was still on the deed, and it just was messy. And I had a friend say, you really should look at houses. And after much discussion and prayer, felt like there was a release from the Lord to look for a different place to live. And so we started looking at houses. I was very nervous because both kids were living at home at that time, and I'm a single parent, and moving is a lot. I don't like moving,
Me neither.
I mean, if God moves me, I'll move, but I'm not a kind of person that wants to move around a lot. And so I was very nervous that we'd end up selling the house and not having a house to go into. And up popped the house I'm in now on Zillow. And I'm looking at the house, and it was a Cape Cod, which I hadn't even told my realtor how much I liked Cape Cods, but I wasn't seeing any on the market. So it's
Mhm.
cute little Cape Cod, and it had a pool, an in-ground pool in the back. And I've got 2 teenagers. And I was like, could I really afford a house with a pool? What does this look like? And so I was so excited and so blessed to be able to move into that house, and felt like God just blessed me with lots of things about it that I loved. And I moved in July, and August of the year we moved, I think it's 2017, was the solar eclipse.
Oh,
And
yeah.
in Colombia, we had one of the best views. I mean, people were coming from all over to see the eclipse here in Colombia. They even delayed the start of school that year. And
Mm.
so I had like 60 people in my backyard for a solar eclipse party.
Mm.
And I just thought, this is what I want living here to feel like. I want to be able to have people and share what God has blessed me with. And then, and so I know he put me in that house, and he created something, and all through the problems I've had with it, I just kept hearing the Lord saying, I gave you the house, I'll sustain you in it. And he
Mhm.
has. And so, that's very cool. I've met not all of my neighbors, but many neighbors,
Mhm.
and some of them, like there's a police officer that lives real close to me, and she got held up at work one day, and she asked me if I'd go put out her dogs. And I've had other people that I've done errands for when they were sick, and it just feels nice to be part of a community.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yep.
It's cool to think about that. Me and Kristen, we knew that God was calling us here, and we also knew that God was calling us to start a business, which was really interesting. That's never happened to me before. I mean, I've never ever done a business or anything like that. And so when we moved here, we knew we needed to be in the community doing different things, and we didn't. So we were looking for a house, a tiny, smaller house that we could then take some money that we had saved and put that into starting a business of whatever, like literally no idea. And I remember when we came to this house, it had been on the market for 3 years. It was like, this house is sick. Like we were kind of looking at it like it was a joke. Like, let's just go see it, Zeke. Can we just go see it? And when we got here, we realized that it had a whole other cottage that was on the property, and nobody had wanted to buy it for 3 years because it wasn't really, it's hard to explain. Now that somebody's living in it, it looks very livable. But before
Yeah.
we moved in, this house did not look livable. It looked kind of like a event space
Mhm.
and with a few bedrooms but not really walls between the bedrooms. So it was kind of random, but that was whenever God really opened the door of like, what if your house was the business? What if this was an Airbnb? And that was kind of the beginning of a whole business that unfolded. And like, literally couldn't have dreamed it up myself. Didn't even know, I had never stayed in an Airbnb in my life. I didn't even know anything about it. And I was like, Zeke, do you think this would really rent? And he's like, yeah, man, of course it would rent. You know, Zeke, if you know Zeke, you'd be like, are you sure, man? And turns out it did. And God really worked through it. And then that allowed us to start the coffee business, which is really the thing that put us in the community, which is what we felt like God was telling us to do from the beginning. So it's like all of these things ended up going hand in hand. And so you see God threading the needle in the end. But sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it's just like, what? I just couldn't see it, you know? And it was scary because it was like, are we just being overindulgent? Because it was more that of a house than we needed. It was too big, you know, and we were looking for really entry level homes. And it ended up just being like, wow, God just really blessed that. And so then the second part of the question, because we're getting to the end, the second part of this is, so how does this, now that we've talked about that, how does this change the way you see your neighbors and your role in your neighborhood? Does it change it at all for you? Like looking at it as this was not just me picking a house.
Yeah.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
It's
You
like a
know,
reminder.
yeah. So when I walk my dogs, I pray for the neighbors, you know, and some of them I can pray for by name. Some of them I pray for just because I recognize, you know, here's the guy with this kind of dog or the woman with that, you know, kind of car. But, you know, I've had 2 neighbors in the last couple of years lose a spouse. And so when I go past their house, I pray for them as they're grieving. And so it just gives you a different sense of responsibility to love
Yeah.
people well.
It's
Yeah.
another resource that God has given you.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, you preached it this past Sunday, Pastor Michelle, when you talked about that we were blessed to be a blessing. And so I don't see, us landing here in this subdivision as happenstance. I
Mhm.
see it as God's providential and divine will playing out. And so if I want to be a part of that, I need to look at ways that make sense on how I love my neighbors.
Mhm.
And so that's been the cool thing, because the only reason why I was able to rattle off the things I was able to rattle off is because we know each other. Some of my neighbors actually are part of my Monday night life group,
Mhm.
and that was intentional. That wasn't accidental. And I don't rag. Well, some of the people in my life group are on the HOA, but I don't rag against the HOA. I understand what their function is, you
Mhm.
know. And I get it. Some people just don't want to be told what to do until somebody else's ability to have their freedom infringes upon their freedom. So I mean, that's the whole purpose of having some type of governmental organization, whether that's a HOA or board or whatnot. And so I try to come up with ways that I can be a blessing to the people that God said, this is where I'm planting you.
Yep.
Mhm. Mhm. I think it's a good encouragement. So I think it was interesting to hear you guys share your stories, and I hope our listeners maybe you will look at your story of how you landed where you're at. And it maybe at first glance it seems real common and you'll brush it off. Or maybe if you look a little deeper, you'll see God's hand weaving a story. And as soon as you can open your eyes up to that story that God's writing, it might change your perception of the people around you. It might change the way you react to the people around you. And that would be kind of one of the goals, not just from this sermon, but from this series. And we would encourage you, your homework is to think about the story of how you landed where you landed. And it doesn't have to be your house. It can be your work. It can be your pattern. It could be your rhythm of getting coffee in the morning. What are the rhythms that God has, got you in? And how is he using them? How could he use them? And open your eyes to those opportunities. We all need that reminder. I do. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about you guys telling your story. And I'm like, when I first moved in, I knew everybody in my neighborhood. And since then, they've built so many houses. I don't think I know all the new people. So I got to get to know them, so it's inspiring me. I'm learning right now on this podcast. So yeah, good stuff. Any other thoughts for you guys or final words before we wrap up?
There's a diagram, and this is a cheat code that I'm getting you on the website of Art of Neighboring, artofneighboring.com. And it's a diagram that has your house in the center, and it has 3 houses above you, 3 houses beneath you, and 1 on each side. And the point of which I'm telling you this is because Rob is going to be teaching this coming Sunday about seeing our neighbors. And the exercise that he's going to invite you to do is to actually be able to fill in those 8 boxes. I think it's 8 boxes with you being in the center about your neighbors. So being able to fill in their names and or whatever information that you can put in about them. And this is to challenge you to say, hey, I have a responsibility to get to know these people because they're people that Christ died for as well.
Yep. It's good stuff. Yep.
Any announcements, Michelle?
Well, we still have a few seats left in Rooted.
A few.
And then we have a class coming up at the end of September called 6 Weeks on Money. And Philip was talking earlier today, if your wallet is hurting because
from
of
school
back to
starting.
school, yep, might be a good time to think about getting a handle on your finances. And then we also have the Celebrate lunch later this month. And there was a third thing. What?
Well, I know student programming will start back.
Yes.
Next week, I think.
Yep. Oh, Divorce Care's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts the first week of September. So people need to go on the events page because there's something happening for everyone this month.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we'll sign off, but much love to everybody. We'll
have a good night, everybody.
Eastlake Community Church is an intentional, multicultural community empowered by the Holy Spirit. We passionately pursue a loving relationship with God and everyone Jesus was sent to die for, here, near, and far.
Yeah, maybe Ray, you could test your microphone doing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air rap.
Oh, wait.
How does it go? Where does it start?